Okay, great. The recording is now in progress. And as always, after the meeting has wrapped up, I'll work on a summary of the meeting and that'll be posted to the website. We'll also share the meeting recording on the department's YouTube channel, and I'll share that link and information on the listserv later in the week. So just to get started, again, my name's Carolyn Mark. I'm the department's Interlibrary Loan and Government Services librarian. It's so great to see everybody today. I thought just to get started, we don't always do this, but there's a big group today and I see some familiar faces and some new folks. So I thought if anyone would like to take the opportunity to unmute and introduce yourselves and say what library you're joining us from and what your role is there. And feel free if you like to do that either on the camera or in the chat just to get us started. I'm not going to call on anybody. Feel free to do it random. I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
Hi, I'm Jude.
And I'm Yvonne.
And we're at Rutland Free.
Yeah, in Rutland, Vermont. And we've been doing, I think, ILL services for about, wow, 3 or 4 years now?
Oh, I think it's more like 6.
6, okay. There you go.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're both circulation assistants.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining and thanks for the intro. Appreciate it. Oh, we have a message in the chat from Kelly. She says, I'm sitting in a noisy library during lunch, so it'll be hard to talk. Totally understandable. Appreciate you joining while even while there's a bit of busyness in the library. And we have another comment in the chat from McClure Library, and Shelley says hello. Hi, Shelley. Thanks for joining us. Oh, hey, Scott. I'm not sure about other folks, but I can't hear you right now. I can see you okay, but no audio on my end. Can't hear you. Yeah, no luck there. Sorry, Scott. All right, well, while Scott's troubleshooting, I'm sorry. It's great to see you. While Scott's joining us, I can say from UVM Howe Library today. It's great to see you as always. And if your audio comes on, please feel free to chime in anytime or in the chat. Appreciate you joining. A couple other comments coming in, which is great. Thanks, everybody. I'll just read through these briefly. Sandy at West Hartford says that she's also live and full of people. Should be listening in when I can. Thank you, Sandy. Jenny at McCullough says hello from sunny North Bennington. Lots of joy-filled background noise here, but listening in. Niket from Westford Public Library, the library technical assistant, says hello. We also have a message in the chat from Karen Chatfield at the Pearson Library in Shelburne. She's the circulation supervisor there. Tenzin reaches out and says good afternoon. Another message from Michelle at Fletcher Memorial Library in Ludlow. She says hi. We have a message from Richmond Free Library. Mel says hi from there. Another hi from Pat and Wynn Hall, a one-room schoolhouse library. That's really special. And Tenzin from the Fletcher Free Library. Thanks, Tenzin. And then we have another message too from Alice reaching out from Johnson VTSU Library. Okay, great. Well, if anybody else would like to, reach out and introduce themselves at any point, we'll keep the chat open for the whole meeting. But just to get us started for now, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Karen, our consultant for inclusive services and the director of the ABLE Library. Thanks so much for joining us today, Karen.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I don't have a super formal presentation. I mostly just wanted to come and talk just briefly about the ABLE Library's deposit collections. So for those of you who know, and for those of you who don't know, the ABLE Library, we offer large print and accessible youth collection deposit collections, which means that we send a number of books to public libraries. They keep the books for 3 months, circulate them to their patrons, and then send them back to us. And we send the books to libraries through the U.S. Postal Service. USPS has a free program that's called Free Matter for the Blind and Handicapped. And so we're able to send books to libraries, free of charge, and then libraries can send them back to us free of charge. We have these atrocious nice giant black boxes that the large print books go out to libraries in, and you send them back to us in the same boxes. So you don't even have to provide any shipping materials really when you do that. And the reason that I am here today is because there has been some confusion with the difference between those deposit collections and interlibrary loan, because we also circulate our large print and accessible youth materials through interlibrary loan as well. And so the difference being that if you have a patron who comes into the library and they just want the one book, right? So they're looking for something in particular, maybe they're in a book club or something like that, and they need the large print. That's a great use for interlibrary loan. Feel free to request them in the same way that you request all of your interlibrary loan materials, and we will send it out to you that way. And then send it back in the same way that you would your interlibrary loan materials through the courier, mostly. If you are a library that gets our deposit collections and you want to request books that way, then we would send them out to you in a batch. Usually we have libraries who have 6 books at a time, and we have libraries who have 100 books at a time. So whatever way it is that your library requests, or however many your library requests, we will box those up for you and send them to you in the mail. But what we're finding is that there are some libraries that are perhaps requesting books that seem to be one-offs that are going out to patrons through the deposit collection method versus interlibrary loan. And so I'm sort of here to help hopefully clear that up. It's not the end of the world if it happens, but because we have a limited supply of the boxes and the bags that we send books out to, we want to make sure that libraries aren't requesting one-offs as a deposit collection and instead are going through interlibrary loan. That being said, I did mention accessible youth books. So there are, we have high contrast picture books and board books, as well as wonder books that are available both as deposit collections and through interlibrary loan. So feel free to request those as well. We're happy to. If we've had some libraries that have just started getting those books as deposit collections. We've also seen them starting to go out as interlibrary loans. And then we also just added decodable books to our collection. And so those are books that are meant to help people who are learning how to read, and they teach specific letter sound combinations. So they're essentially meant for to supplement what's being taught right now in a lot of Vermont schools. It seems like the Vermont schools in general are moving more towards what we call this quote unquote science of reading, which is more phonics based than perhaps it's been in the recent past. So we have some of those books available, and those are actually available. We put them on LibCal, which is our reservation system where folks can also get story walks and our welcoming collection kits. And the reason we did that is because those are, LibCal lets you put in a request for a specific time. So say you're having perhaps a program on literacy, or you know that when school starts is when you're going to see those requests, you can make a request for that specific period of time and get those books for that time in your library. And that, I think, is basically all that I had, Carolyn, unless there are questions or if I forgot something that maybe you want to mention. And thank you for putting those links in the chat.
Of course. Thanks, Karen. That was a super helpful overview. And yeah, just for context for what I just dropped into the chat, there's a link. The first link that I put in is for the LibCal, direct will bring you right to the reservation system where you can review all of the items that are available for request. There's pictures, descriptions, and sort of the equivalent of a catalog record for each. The second link that I dropped in is for the Department of Library's website, and that's an informational webpage with information for how to place the request, and it sort of walks you through step by step. So those are the main 2 things that I had to add, but I just wanted to open the floor if anyone had any comments or questions for Karen. To get us started, I do see one question that came up from Tenzin in the chat, so I'll start there. Tenzin asks, were you in Clover just like other libraries so that you can see the requests from libraries? I believe that these items are viewable in Clover, but a message will display next to the item record that says request in libcal in parentheses. The idea being that folks can review the record in Clover, but we're trying to funnel the requests for like the decodable books and some of these other kits specifically through the libcal reservation system at this time. Does that ring true, Karen?
Yes,
Okay.
the large print books, the Wonder books, and the high
Yes.
contrast books, those are all searchable in Clover. I believe that it might be under the Department of Libraries, and the request goes to the Department of Libraries, not to ABLE, and it's Vance who ends up processing those requests.
That's correct. Yeah. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
Wendy has a hand raised, and then we'll move to Scott's question after in the chat. Go ahead, Wendy.
Hi, I'm Wendy from the Northrop Memorial in Fairfield.
Hey, Wendy.
And nice doing that. We are one of the libraries that actually gets a deposit. I currently have a patron who has had eye surgery and had to have eye surgery on both eyes and is having difficulty reading. That person has already gone through our deposit, and I've begun trying to get large print through Clover. Unfortunately, the issue that I'm having is that we have libraries that have large print on the regular record. So large print it's being shown as a large print record, but I'm getting normal print. Plus, I haven't seen ABLE or the Vermont Department of Libraries when I've been doing my search. So, but I also regularly hit vocal, so maybe that's my problem.
I think so. I think if my understanding that the Vermont Department of Libraries and ABLE Holdings, if you were going to filter by libraries in Clover, it would fall under the Verso Union catalog because Verso is the primary ILS for the department. So I think that would be a good like shortcut for filters to get started. And then when you're looking at the item records for books, I believe it will say Vermont Department of Libraries or Vermont State Library - ABLE Library for the location to differentiate. But if you come across a record and you have any questions and you're like, I feel like ABLE has this, or maybe the department has it, feel free to send an email to us anytime and we can try to track down like the most convenient copy for your library.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. A couple other questions here in the chat from Scott. Related question, can they be delivered and returned via courier? Karen, I'll pass this one off to you because I believe it depends by the type of item.
Right. So if it's a deposit collection, so if we're sending you a deposit collection that you're going to keep in your library and circulate to your patrons, then those typically go through the U.S. Postal Service rather than the courier, and we encourage folks to do that. Although Carolyn, I'm not sure if there's space in your courier bin and you want to send it back that way. Is that okay?
I think that is okay. Yeah, especially if there's space in your bin. And then I think folks know that if you happen to need an extra bin, I think it's like between a $2 and $3 charge for that if you happen to go over.
But just to keep in mind that using the U.S. Postal Service is free when you're using our boxes. It's clearly marked that it's free matter for the blind. You don't have to add anything to it. You just flip over the mailing card and it has our address on the other side, and then you don't have to pay postage.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Karen. Thank you for that summary. That's really helpful. A question from Karen Chatfield. Are there any large print materials available for young adults? Karen, can you speak to that in regards to like the ABLE and the state libraries collections?
Yes, in our collection, we have large print materials for all the way from children to adults. And Jonathan Clark, our youth services consultant, has been super helpful in adding to that collection. So we do, whenever possible, try to add things that are like the book award winners. If they're available in large print, we'll try to add them. So we do have quite a few books in large print that are young adult.
Thanks, Karen. And thanks everyone for the questions. These are all great questions. Oh, Wendy, you have a hand raised. Please go ahead.
Karen, do you have a collection for people with dyslexia?
We don't have a specific collection available. And one of the reasons for that is that it is very difficult to source publishers that use dyslexic font. I have not had any great luck in finding books that are printed in dyslexic font. If at all possible, it's sad to say, but I recommend apps like Libby, where they do have those fonts available for folks to use when they're reading ebooks. Large print can be helpful for people with dyslexia because the font is larger, the space between the lines of texts is greater, and so it's easier to sort of either follow along, or sometimes, I don't know if you've seen them, they look like rulers where it's a line that highlights the text, and so those are easier to use in large print books because there's that space between the lines of texts. So it could be that large print is a good sort of resource to start people off with if they're looking for a physical print material. It's just unfortunate that right now we're limited by what the market has to offer.
I just find that, I'm sure we all find that, we have kids that have dyslexia that kind of fly under the radar. And then when it's finally discovered, we don't have materials for them, and they're already kind of discouraged and they don't want to read. There might be somebody in my family that is like that and too old to change her ways. But, yeah, that was.
Yeah, and there are, like I said, there are things like those rulers. Some people find that page overlays over you can get essentially a transparent page that's a different color that you put over the page of a book that people with dyslexia have found helpful. So there are tools that you can use to help people with the books that you already have on hand, which is sort of the best workaround at this point.
Cool. Thank you for the tips.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Thanks for the advice, and thanks, Wendy, for the questions. These are all really solid questions we have coming in. Good discussion. I'm just catching up with the chat here. Yeah, Mel from Richmond, she agrees. I've experienced the same thing, requesting a large print specific record, but a regular arrives. Meg writes ditto. That's fair, and I have to say I don't necessarily have a perfect solution to that, because in theory, if you're requesting the large print record, that does come up in the request as large print. What I will occasionally do, if I remember, is to include in the lender's note that you're specifically seeking a large print record, and even maybe putting like a couple of asterisks, or there's not really a way to make bold font in Clover, but some kind of attention way, or if it's a title that, for example, it's maybe your second time trying to get it, maybe giving the library a call and just leaving a voicemail and saying, I just put a request into Clover. It looks like you're the pending lender, or that you've marked the request as will supply. I just want to confirm that it is a large print request. I will check in with Autographics and see if there might be a way that we're able to better differentiate that within the Clover Share It platform. But for now, I strongly recommend relying on those lenders and borrowers notes to have just a record of communication and any special requests for an ILL, whether it be format or maybe an extended due date for a book club or something specific like that. Those note fields in Clover are a great place to cover that. I'm just going to go on to Gail's question here in the chat. I'm sorry I missed some of the meeting. That's totally okay. Thank you for joining when you could. She asks, can you borrow a set of Wonder Books through LibCal? I don't see those on LibCal, or do we borrow one at a time through ILL? We'd love to borrow a set of Wonder Books. Karen, could I pass that one to you?
Absolutely. I'd love to loan you a set of Wonder Books. We don't have a specific sets set up in LibCal. So we're treating them as deposit collections. So if you either email the Able Library or give us a call and let us know what you're interested in, we can set it up so that you get a deposit collection of Wonder Books in the same way that you do large print. I will say that we sort of try to limit the number of Wonder Books that go out to a library because they are so expensive. So right now it's about 6 books per library that we're sending out, just because it's a huge financial burden if something happens to those books, and then also to your patrons. And so we just want to make people aware of that when we're loaning them out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Robin commented in the chat and shares, I once requested a book and received an audiobook. Well, yeah, shucks, that's not what you want to happen. And she says, after I double checked to make sure I'd correctly requested a book instead of an audiobook. Yeah, I think that, again, I would definitely recommend entering in the borrower's notes or the lender's notes if you have a moment and just specifically noting the format. I think that with the majority of materials that people request based on the statistics that I see being in print format, to be honest, I think when folks get into a flow on the circulation desk or like pulling these materials, the default is often the print format. I will touch base, like I had just suggested, with autographics to see if there is a way to make the format like more prominent on the record in some way, because this seems to be something just based on this thread here that folks are coming across a lot. And I really do want to make the Clover experience as user-friendly as possible for folks. So I really appreciate the feedback that you're sharing here. Oh, and a comment from Wendy. She shares that I did ask libraries in a recent thread to ask people to run a report to confirm their large print is not on a regular record. That's a great suggestion. And I'll also bring this up in my conversation with my colleague, the consultant for cataloging. Her name's Lauren. She runs a cataloging roundtable, and this might be a good like crossover conversation for maybe a potential agenda item for her to consider for her roundtable too, just to make sure that these are being cataloged in such a way that the information is being channeled into Clover correctly for like the best user experience. Oh, you're welcome, Gail, of course. Question from Robin. She says, how many Wonder Books do you have in the collection? And do you know if some of them are graphic novels? Karen, do you happen to know?
Yeah, so we have right now, it's a pretty small collection. We have around 150 Wonder Books that are available, and that runs from picture books to early readers and some chapter books. We don't have any, we don't have like Marvel comic type graphic novels that are Wonder Book, in Wonder Book format. We have some of like the Dogman, Captain Underpants type graphic novels in audio. Again, it's one of those things that's super dependent on the provider. So with the Wonder Books, I specifically look for, if it's any chapter book, that it's in large print. They do offer that. So I, when at all possible, purchase the large print Wonder Books. And then the picture books and easy readers. So, but there aren't any adult Wonder Books available at this point in time. They're all, I would say, middle grade to picture books.
Cool. Well, thanks, Karen. Yeah, and if anyone has questions after the meeting that come up later on, feel free to reach out if you have questions about how to request these materials, where to find them, anything like that. We're always happy to help. Another comment in the chat that I'd like to share, this one's from Kat at Middlebury. She says, all the notes. I think this is in reference to like those lenders and borrowers notes. If you need a specific format, there's no such thing as too many notes. Even in brackets after the title can help. And she notes in brackets, video recording or audiobook, similarly to what you would see on like a catalog record at the end of the 245 or like the title field. In some records, it'll note the format. So that is helpful. You can manually edit the title in Clover if it's a blank request. I think you might be able to add something to the title field, even if it's not. I'll check on that. But definitely any lender's notes, however obvious you can make it, would be helpful for everybody who's reviewing the request. So thank you for that suggestion. And Karen, helpfully, thank you for putting this in the chat, Karen. Shared the contact information for the Able Library. So I'm going to read it out loud just in case the comment doesn't carry over to the recording. That email address is lib.able library@vermont.gov. And the phone number for ABLE is 802-636-0020. Again, that phone number is 802-636-0020. I just felt like I read that like I was on an infomercial.
You did a
Anyway,
great job.
next on QVC, yeah. A question came up. Oh, Meg has her hand raised. Yeah, go ahead, Meg, and then I'll bop to Robin's question afterwards in the chat.
Can you hear me okay?
I can, thanks, Meg.
Okay, cool. I think actually I might be piggybacking off Robin's comment, which I just saw, because I just wanted to say, like, again, I feel like such a broken record, but I feel like we really all need to be better about reading the notes and then doing what the note says. I think like that comes up. I agree, Robin, like the book club thing, I am constantly getting books that due dates aren't adjusted, and like honestly at that point I just kind of assume I will send it back after the meeting, because like I'm fine if you can't lend it for that long. Like I totally get it. It usually is asking for a long time, but then it just ends up adding this whole extra step of I'm constantly monitoring, overdue things in Clover for this book group and stuff. So again, I totally echo, like, yeah, more notes. I always try, I know it's come up and I think we're going to talk about like damage stuff, or again, like when it is large print, I know because it all is kind of a bigger cataloging question, I do try to put that in there too. But I think, just making sure that we're all making the adjustments as they come in. Obviously things slip through the cracks, but I think we can all kind of try and do that to make us all feel sane.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meg. Yeah, I completely agree with what you said. And I strongly encourage everyone to review those lenders and borrowers notes in Clover. I think with the recent request from the library review, they used to be more in like the middle towards the top of the request record. And now, unfortunately, they're at the bottom. So if you do have a request with a bit of a lengthy request history or a lot of detail, you do have to scroll down. So I encourage folks to kind of get in the practice of when you open a request record in Clover, just scroll to the bottom briefly and just make sure there are no notes and nothing that you may have missed. I'll double check, but I believe after the August roundtable that was added to the best practices Google Doc. I'll double check, but I do believe that we added a note in there encouraging folks to double check the lenders and borrowers notes while they're working through Clover. And so piggybacking off of that, I'm going to read off Robin's comment. She says, in reference to adding notes to a request, when I request books for our book club, I ask for a later return date. Many folks who provide copies without giving the return date that I request, I feel like we need a better culture of reading the notes. So let's that be, our resolution moving forward, that everyone tries to get into that practice. And I appreciate the feedback and the comments. Oh, thank you, Wendy. She shares that my notes are right under the due date. So yeah, if you're looking at a request record, that's the place to go. And that's pretty helpful if someone is requesting a specific due date for like a book club or whatever, you can address that and just adjust the date right there. And Ruth adds a little comment as well. She says, the notes do make things take more time. That's true. I wish there was a way people didn't have to put courier only requests in there. I'd be happy to share with you, Ruth, a little bit of information about like the preferred lender list that folks work with to prioritize like courier only, but I do recommend that if you are specifically requesting something at this point with the sort of limitations and the invisible walls that exist within Clover, using the notes for courier only is the way to go. So before I move forward with these additional questions here in the chat, I just wanted to check and see if anyone has any other questions about ABLE library services or any of the topics that Karen brought up in regards to like how to ship ABLE materials or NLS discussion sets or anything like that. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. So I just wanted to thank Karen again so much for joining. Karen, you're welcome to join for as long as you want, but we had a great turnout today, and I think it's largely because of the announcement shared on the listserv that you'd be here sharing this information about how to ship these materials back. So I so appreciate you joining us and helping to sort of clear up people's questions, and hopefully this will lead to more folks checking out LibCal and the offerings of the Able Library.
Thanks so much for having me, and our contact information is in the chat. I'm always happy to hear from any of you, so please feel free to reach out if you have questions or want to try out the Wonder Books or anything like that. Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks
you
so much, Karen. Yeah, take care. Thanks, Karen. Okay, great. So I'm just going to continue with the questions that are coming up here in the chat. I do have an agenda, but there's some great questions coming up here that I think that we can get to first. So let's see. So yeah, we read through Ruth's comment. Again, just to summarize my response to that, I will be continue to check in with Autographics about the capabilities of how we can route like a dedicated list outside of the preferred lender list, but I do recommend using that preferred lender list with a combination of courier libraries only please or something to that effect in your borrower's notes. Here's a comment from Gail. Most of the time when I see a request with an extended due date for book clubs, the requested due date is before of the preset due date. I wonder if sometimes libraries are putting the date they plan on distributing the book, not the date that they discuss. Yeah, that's a fair observation and question. Yeah, I encourage folks to just double check what date you're entering in the lender's note, and that the due date that you're requesting would be the date that you would want to be returning it ultimately. So just double check that to make sure that like you're returning books in a timely manner. A question from Kat, could you send out the most recent preferred courier list again via email? Yes, I'd be happy to do that for sure. I have a copy of, I think one from September. I'm just gonna make a note of that. Okay. Robin commented, this is about book club due date. She shares, I put a due date that is 7 days after our book club meets. So that's referring to the borrower's note. I think that's helpful. Yeah, I think that gives folks enough time to get the book back to the library. You can, if you're borrowing all of the books, especially from one place, or you want to get them into the courier on your specific pickup day, setting that up and just trying to keep some of those moving parts in line when you're trying to choose a date. I think that's really helpful. Thanks, Wendy, for the comment. And another question from McClure Library, how do you automatically send to courier libraries? Should be one click. My understanding is that the preferred lender list, which you set from the staff dashboard, and I can send out specific instructions on this on the listserv later, is the closest to a one-click solution that is currently available within the parameters of Clover. And as you know, we continue to have different enhancements offered by Autographics, that is something that is on their radar and that we aim to have be a priority for future enhancement releases. And Kat shares, this is about the preferred lender list. It's a setting thing that's mostly copy and paste, set it up once and not worry again until there are new libraries on the courier. Yes, that's right. So my understanding is that my predecessor, April, each year new libraries would join the courier, the preferred lender list would be sent out. I think in 2024 there was a change to how the preferred lender list was structured and accessed. And so I have those modified instructions, and I'll continue to send the updated list out. And so following up on the question from McClure Library of where do you paste the new list, I'll send out a detailed instructions, like informational sheet, like via the ILL listserv, and maybe I'll send it in the courier listserv to both because I think it's accurate. Yeah, info sheet for sure. Yeah, it used to be in the participant record, and now that I'm here, I'm just kind of blanking on where it was relocated to, but it did used to be in the participant record. Now it's on a different section from the staff dashboard. And a comment from Ruth. Oh, sure. Yeah. She says, yes, sorry, I didn't mean to complain about it. I know the note about the couriers needed now, but just hoping it gets streamlined. Me too, fingers crossed. And I appreciate not only the feedback about the way that the system exists right now that everybody brings to these meetings, but as well what folks mentioned that they wish Clover could do that it currently couldn't now is helpful for me to hear, because when we have meetings with Autographics, we can mention different enhancements, and I submit the enhancements that folks email to me. Just for example, in the past, folks have reached out asking for like an option to undo a check-in or undo a return. And that's something that I passed along to Autographic so that their team is considering as an enhancement. So if you are ever in your ILL zone and you're like, oh, I wish Clover could do this, if you think of it, make a note and send it to me, or bring it to this meeting like we're talking about here. And that's really helpful as I'm trying to make the system better for everybody. Cool. So I think I've covered the questions in the chat for now. I'm trying to think. I think I'll screen share the agenda. I don't usually do it this way, but we have a couple of things that were submitted via the listserv that I think it might be helpful to have the text up. So if I screen share this and folks are finding it burdensome or like you can't see the screen or whatever, just unmute or put something in the chat, and we'll figure this out as we go. So I'm going to share the agenda. And I'm going to have the chat open too. So sometimes when I do this, and I do the screen sharing of the window, the chat pop-ups from Teams don't appear. So I will be checking the chat like every couple of minutes to make sure that I'm keeping up with questions that come in. But if you have a question that's like, I want to ask this now, please interrupt me and unmute yourself. Like it's totally cool. So the first thing that I'm going to start with, we've gone through everything here under number 1, is a listserv item that was submitted by Marie from the Warren Library. And so I'll screen share this, and then after we read this through, I'm going to show folks where this is currently on the ILL best practices document, just for like reference. So Marie writes, it used to be that libraries could request types of materials only if they lent those items. This usually applied to DVDs and audiobooks on CD. The ILL code currently reads, the requesting library should be conscious of the types of materials it is willing to supply and request similar types of materials, supplying as freely as it requests. And so that's coming from the Vermont ILL code. I'm going to read this through one more time because the website that the Vermont ILL code on is currently down, their server's down. So it says, the requesting library should be conscious of the types of materials it is willing to supply and request similar types of materials, supplying as freely as it requests. And so Marie was thinking about this and she wanted me to bring to the meeting because she couldn't join us today, unfortunately. She writes, as more libraries deaccession these types of materials, DVDs, CD audiobooks, does this affect willing to supply since they can't supply similar materials? She continues, I guess I'm just interested in a conversation around these whole categories of materials and what happens when fewer of us have them on offer. Does a library have to have a collection of audiobooks on CD to request one? Is that keeping in line with the sentence, also from the ILL code? ILL should, however, serve as an adjunct, not a substitute for collection development. So I thought that was a great question that Marie brought. And I'm going to stop sharing the agenda and transition to sharing the ILL best practices document. Just one second there. And so again, I had tried to access the Vermont ILL code earlier today, and the website was timing out, unfortunately for me. So I will try that again, but in lieu of being able to display the full ILL code, what I can share is what we have here in the best practices document, which is just our brief, I wouldn't say summary of the sentiment that Marie had shared in quotes, but don't request items if you don't lend them. New items, audiovisual, DVD, etc. We had a great conversation in the August roundtable about libraries that lend new items and libraries that don't. And in the previous meeting summary, I even put together a little list of the libraries who all shared that they did lend new items, which I thought was helpful. But I was just curious to hear from everybody what their thoughts were on this. What is your library's practice with these types of materials? And I'm going to just open up the floor for anyone who has comments. I see that Wendy has a hand raised as well, so feel free, Wendy.
Yeah, as I understood it, if you don't have a collection, it's fine. But back in the old days, when everybody had a collection, some libraries just wouldn't lend their audiobooks or their DVDs. So it was those people that that if they didn't lend, then they shouldn't be asking for them. But if you don't have a collection, absolutely ask us. And I
Thank
think
you, Wendy.
nowadays it's more about the new books.
I think so too. Yeah, that was my understanding as well, but sort of being a little bit like more behind the scenes, I was curious to hear from everybody's experience like working in the library. And to me, new books for sure, like if you don't lend new books, don't request new books in Clover. And this felt like a little bit more of a gray area to me because I think that some libraries in Vermont have long-standing audiobooks and DVD collections that they're continuing to grow, where other libraries are decreasing and like weeding those collections for various reasons, whether it be collection development or space or whatever it might be. So that's really helpful insight to have. I'm going to read through a couple of the comments in the chat. This is really helpful context. So thanks everybody for sharing. Gail writes, I think it is a no if you have it but don't own it. Sorry, I mean, perhaps we shouldn't request it if we own it but won't lend it. I think that makes sense for sure. And Kat shares that they chatted about this with their boss, and our policy at the college, Middlebury College, is apparently that we can borrow anything. We don't have an express policy against sharing. So we can borrow formats we don't own, but if we don't lend our new books, we can't borrow new books, if that makes sense. I think that makes total sense. I think that echoes, if I'm reading through this with the correct lens, what Wendy had said as well. And Alice chimes in, agreed with Wendy, going on 22 years. Gail shares, I would bet most libraries don't lend Wonder books. That's why it's so great that the state lends them. Oh, thank you, Gail. I appreciate that comment. And yeah, I think what Karen shared about the cost of Wonder books was pretty eye-opening to me. I didn't realize like the liability, for lack of a better word, that could be involved with lending something so costly, especially for libraries with, I mean, for any size budget, but particularly smaller rural libraries with a limited collection development budget, the loss of a Wonder book could be a big impact. So I really encourage folks to reach out to us at the Department of Libraries if you're interested in lending Wonder books or any of the materials that Karen was chatting about earlier. Tenzin shares, we used to not lend or borrow new books, but now we do. That's great. I will add that to the meeting summary. Thank you for sharing. And that is Tenzin from the South Burlington Library sharing that they do now lend new books out. That's great. Mel from Richmond Free Library chimes in and says, we lend DVDs, CDs, and audiobooks to anyone who requests, whether or not the borrower lends those items. We don't lend magazines, games, Vox boxes like Wonder Books and new books. That's helpful. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing like your different policies and how that works. Regarding requesting new items, my understanding is that we are supposed to wait 60 days after the pub date to request a new item from another library. Is this correct? And this is coming from Karen at Chatfield. I don't have access to the Vermont ILL code right now. I'm going to take a quick peek at the best practices. I do know that when we're requesting materials from out of state, we wait 6 months to request a new title. And so that's the number that is like ingrained in my memory and slated, so to speak. I'm just going to take a really quick scan here and see if that's mentioned. Okay, it is. Yeah, so I have the ILL best practices open here, which is linked in the agenda for anyone interested. I'm just going to copy and paste the text into the chat box for that with a quote from where it's coming from. And so the current ILL best practices document, and this was a section of it that was present in the document before I started the department. I'm not quite sure when this was added, but I think it's been in there for a little while. It says, do not request a new title until it has been published for 60 days to allow time for processing and local use. And so I think that's speaking to specifically like the pub date giving the vendor an opportunity to get it to the library, for the library to have a chance to catalog, process it, and get it onto the shelf. I think many libraries do go for the 6-month line, but it seems that 60 days here is the baseline of waiting. But I will say that for any books that are less than 6 months old in Clover, I'll often see requests come to the VSS account where a title will have gone through like 15 libraries in the pending queue. And then eventually it'll come to VSS and we have to write a comment that's like, please request this after X date. So for any books that are new that you're trying to get from an out-of-state library, that is a 6-month waiting period. And if you ever have any like questions about just kind of going off of that, a request that comes into unfilled or retry and the explanation in the lender, the borrower's notes is unclear. If you have any follow-up questions about why a request may not have been filled, please feel free to reach out to me or to anyone on the ILL team, and we're happy to help look into that and to help you troubleshoot to get the ILL for your patron. Oh, I'm sorry, Tenzin. I said that Tenzin was from South Burlington. Tenzin is from Fletcher Free Library from Burlington. My bad, I'm getting the two Burlingtons mixed up. So that's Fletcher Free Library in Burlington is lending new books, not South Burlington. Sorry about that, not trying to spread some false info. Oops, my bad. Kelly Johnston writes and shares that my understanding is that if I won't lend DVDs, that I shouldn't ask to borrow them. I don't have an audiobook on CD collection, but I do borrow them. I think that aligns basically with the conversation we've been having so far. I would agree with that. If your library is not lending DVDs, but you have a collection, marking them as non-lending in Clover for your library, I would recommend, based on the best practices document and the ILL code, not to request to borrow them. However, if you're a library and you don't have an audiobook on CD and you have a patron who's super interested in audiobooks, that's a great opportunity to check out in Clover and explore and see what's available and to request them. I think that falls in line with the policy. Great. Well, thanks everybody for your thoughts. I wanted to give folks an opportunity if they had any other thoughts to share that they wanted to mute themselves, or feel free to add additional comments into the chat at any point, and we can always come back to this. But wow, it's 1:50 already, so time is breezing by. I just want to make sure I do have like 2 hours set aside for this meeting, but that we're moving through the agenda. So I'm going to head on to the next agenda item. And so to do so, I'm just going to screen share back to the agenda. Cool. And so what we just reviewed was this first bulleted item under number 2, which was coming from an email from Marie at the Warren Library. So the next topic came from a listserv email on October 30th, and I just sort of summarized this topic as a discussion of documenting the condition of ILL materials and including a note when returning a book about any observed damage. And this is something that I thought we could just kind of talk about, see how other folks work with this, and maybe consider future discussions to add this to the best practices document, perhaps, or whatever else comes to mind. So Brenda at Ennelsberg wrote to the listserv, we always note on the ILL paperwork and in our spreadsheet the condition of the books when we send them out or receive them. We will make note of water damage, ripped pages, great condition, worn cover, etc., as we want to make sure that we know when our patron may have or have not caused for damage, as the books are the foundation of our libraries, and we want to keep them in good condition. The suggestion was placing, quote, a note on the book when sending it back to let the borrowing library know that you noticed it and recognizing the damage. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I wanted to give folks an opportunity to share. Have you come across this at your library? What do you do if you receive a book that is damaged and it comes to you in the courier? You check the Clover record and there isn't a lender's note that mentions that the book is damaged. That's just kind of an example. But if anything comes to mind, feel free to share. Robin?
So I wanted to say, I think I would, if I was sending it to another library and it was damaged, that makes a lot of sense. Brenda seems to have said that she would send in information even if it's not damaged. And I'm picturing the Fletcher Free Library. I was there the other day. They had 2 full bins leaving, and they do that 5 days a week. That seems like for some libraries, I mean, even for me, that seems like an extra layer of work as a solo librarian that would be almost impossible. And then you do the same sort of math on a library that's sending out 2 full bins, and that seems impossible for them as well. So I think it makes a lot of sense for us to add a note if it's damaged in some way when we send it to the receiving library, but having to say, hey, this was really great, seems like that would be a lot more work.
I think that's a fair take. No, I really appreciate your perspective on that, Robin. I definitely agree with you there that for libraries with like a high volume of ILLs or solo librarians across that spectrum, that added workload could be challenging of noting even when the books are in good condition. So I think that maybe getting into the practice of noting when something is damaged, when you send it out in the lender's note, like even something as brief as water damage on the text block, it's still readable, just a note, something brief like that, I think kind of goes a long way so that someone gets it and isn't surprised like, oh, did this get damaged in the courier? Should I reach out to Carolyn? Should I reach out to Priority? What do I do? And that just kind of clears up any questions before they come up. So I think that's a great suggestion. Meg, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I feel like I do something similar with that as far as notes. I also wasn't totally sure when we were talking about notes if people meant like notes in Clover or like a physical note with the item. Yeah. I haven't been putting things with the items because I feel like we're all in Clover anyways. So that's where I will put my like, whether I'm sending it out or when I receive it, I just put like pre-existing condition note and like try to keep it pretty to the point, like some water damage, some staining. I think we all like have a pretty good threshold that like a library book isn't going to be the same as our like personal copies of books as far as like what is a regular amount of damage. And I feel like when I'm making the notes, maybe I'm a little overly note taking on it, but I'm still like, this would be fine even if it came back and there wasn't a note. But for safety, I think, yeah, putting them all in there. One thing I will say, kind of related, I feel like lately I had been noticing getting more books that I feel like were damaged in like an unreadable condition that I was receiving. Where like, you know, full chunks of text or like like pages are falling out and stuff. And at that point, like I think just like I would rather you say like you're not going to fulfill it, because I think then it's just, you know, one more step to then go back and resend it and adding the notes and all of that. So I think just making sure like both that we're checking damage, and I think everyone has a pretty good sense of about, you know, what's kind of regular library damage, but also like not being afraid to be like, this is not even in good enough condition to send. I find stuff all the time that like people ask me for and I pull it off the shelf and I'm like, oh, we probably shouldn't even have this on the shelf because it's like falling apart. I don't know, that's my 2 cents there. And also, sorry, I would be using the chat more, but I can't like figure out how to type on here. I'm not useful today. So sorry, everyone has to hear my ramblings.
Oh, no worries at all. I really appreciate your comments, Meg. And yeah, when we were chatting earlier, I think we were talking about the lenders and the borrowers notes in the Clover record, but it seems from what I'm seeing in the chat and from some of the questions that are coming up is that some folks do a combination or maybe one or the other. We have a hand raised from the folks in Rutland. Feel free.
Hi, I was just gonna say, we have gotten requested ILLs, and you know, sometimes they're those big graphic novels, and the cover was, we had 2 separate ones from the same graphic, like volume of graphic novel, and the cover was almost completely off, and we just sent them right back because I didn't want to give that, you know,
Right.
So it happens.
Right. We just don't, if something looks like it could be very easily damaged, we don't want to return it to the library that was nice enough to give it to us, you know, and have like them wonder, gee, what did they do with books over there, you know? So we do try to pay attention to how the wear and the stability, I guess, is accurate.
And we also do tend to do like a written note that goes back with the item saying that we recognized it when it came in and it's going back in kind of the same condition. It's just easier, I think, for us to put that physical like note with the book, then go back into Clover as far as a time thing for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And yeah, I think it really depends on how you record the notes and document that, however it fits best into the workflow for your library. I think any contribution is positive towards documenting that. So whether it be the printed note or in Clover. Thank you for sharing your comments about that. A couple comments here in the chat that I'm going to share. Just scrolling back a bit so I can make sure I catch up with everybody has shared. Oh, this is great. Thanks, everyone. All right. Scott at UVM shares, we see lots of underlined text. Yeah. Yeah, that is tricky for sure. You definitely don't want patrons to be underlining the books if at all possible. Tenzin shares that we also started a note before we checked out to our patron. Alice writes, I try to put a note on the book when lending, indicating the condition of the book. Kat shares, I agree. We send out too many things from the Middlebury College, so we'll note if something is really striking, but otherwise we'll just send it out. We expect some wear and tear when it comes back, but if it's bad enough to affect readability, we'll reach out and follow up with the borrower. And Tenzin shares as well, I'm putting note on the sleeve that we print so that our patrons will be aware. That's great. All of these comments are like helpful and maybe things for people to think about with their library workflows too. Gail writes, I've never seen a note on condition when I've received books. Some of the books I received are in very poor shape. I've called libraries when I see really damaged books, for instance, pages falling out. I've also called one of our patrons damaged books to ask whether they want me to replace. Yeah, that's great. That's great accountability and like reciprocity for sure. Great practice. Kat writes, we note in the record and on a book band whenever possible. That's a great combination if you have the time to do both, especially if some libraries are looking for a print note or maybe they're just looking in the record, covering both bases. If you do have the time, that's great. Kelly writes, I agree with Meg. Some of the books that arrive here at the high school are falling apart and I can't give them to my students. Yeah, definitely being mindful of, is this something that you'd want to give to a patron to read? Is this going to be damaged to such an extent when it's under your care and the patron's care? I think those are some considerations to take in mind that I honestly hadn't thought very deeply about before we had this conversation. So this is really helpful for me to consider too. Oh, we have a hand raised. Tracy, please.
Hi. I just put a little chat on there and I realized it could be confusing. So as a regular process, when books are checked in, other items checked in at the library, ILL or not, if damage is noticed, a little damage sticker, and the book is still readable and stuff, then a little damage sticker will go in the back of the book. We then, when it's books going out on ILL, we re-inspect them. We always put a little post-it note in the front of every book. So I think a lot of libraries have probably noticed those. And then if there's damage that seems significant enough to be noted, we'll go and then add a damage sticker to the back of the book if there's not already one there. Or sometimes our little post-it note will say, as noted, and then you can look in the back to see what we noted. It might even say which page the stain is on. One thing I've been really surprised about is when we approach a library to say, to ask, well, what if they noticed any damage when they received our book because it came back to us damaged? A lot of libraries have said, oh, we don't check damage, which that's been kind of surprising. But anyway, when we get books in from other libraries, if we notice any damage, we'll put it right there on that book strap, partly so our patron will know that we're not going to hold them responsible for, that water damage that maybe the book came with. But one thing that I think has also been really odd is there have been times when we know that a book was in okay, or an item was in fine condition when it left our hands, and it has arrived this is rare, but it has arrived at the lending library destroyed. And of course we pay for it, but something sometimes happens to the books in between, in transit somehow. And it's happened in the reverse case too, where you know, I had a conversation with the requesting library, and you know, they were sure that it didn't come, you know, that it didn't come back to them and get shipped out to us with the front cover off or whatever, you know, that something sometimes happens. And so just to entertain that possibility when, you know, if you receive something back, again, the requesting library does have to pay for it, sure, but it's not necessarily the case that the requesting library sent it back that way knowingly, or that they even sent it back that way. And one thing I also was thinking is it would be lovely if there was a way in Clover to communicate about this, as far as like a little something we could check that has to do with damage, because crafting an email where you're trying not to offend the other library, you know what I mean? For like, oh boy, because you don't want to be blaming them for, you know, the book coming back like that. It's just, it would just be nice if there was some quick and easy way to take care of that. Because yeah, or long conversations. Sorry, now I'm talking too much, but long conversations are sometimes like, you know, you might not have time. You got people at the desk and whatever, and it'd be nice if there was this kind of a quick and kind of stress-free way to deal with it, because I know we all are trying to do our best. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for your comments, Tracy. I really appreciate your feedback. Speaking in response to sort of the last point you mentioned about it's like a quick way in Clover to communicate with those things, I'll pass that feedback along to Autographics, especially if there was something where you could note after an item was returned, like some sort of status flag, maybe like a different type of status. I'll think about that and chat with Autographics. I do recommend, if you do receive a book that you borrow or that you've lent and it's damaged, when you receive the book or when it's returned back to you, I do suggest including a note about that so that you do have a record on your ILL request, just as sort of like a baseline starting point. But I appreciate the other feedback you shared, and I think that would be a great enhancement for Autographics, like something a bit more streamlined there. I'm going to read through a couple of the comments that have been shared in response to this too. Kat shares, I do wonder if the courier is particularly hard on things, especially those graphic novels that are already falling apart from the jump. Yeah, I appreciate when folks are reporting that when items are either damaged in transit or lost in transit, contacting me directly or using the same form that is available on the website that you submit the monthly courier statistics for damaged items is helpful. I've put together a spreadsheet where I'm tracking items that are damaged and that are lost, and I list like for an internal document, including where the book was going, where it was going to, and the date. And I am myself in partnership with our partners at Priority are trying to look for patterns and seeing if there are workflow improvements that can be made, whether it be like a missorting issue or something like that. I can't specifically speak to how the books are being handled, but I do understand that everything there is traveling in the courier bags, and the books are going from the bags into the bins at the warehouse and being sorted there. And I think perhaps, you know, potentially along the way, there could be books potentially being damaged in transit from being in the bins and shuffling around, or at the warehouse, especially some of those like thinner paperbacks. If there's a pretty empty bin and it has a lot of room to move around, just kind of thinking out loud, I could see the potential of something being damaged when it's in transit, when it's still the borrowing library's responsibility on its way back to the lending library. So I do think that's something to keep in mind, like just as perspective when you're working through some of those issues.
Dropping it in a puddle, leaving it outside in the rain.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, keep the books out of the puddles. And yeah, Wendy, I was just looking at your comment here where you write, smaller libraries don't have time for a thorough examination. We send a note or call a library if we notice major damage. And yeah, I think that works for your library based on your staff time, capacity, your workflows. So finding that balance is, when I think about best practices, I almost think of it as like best balances sometimes, is like you have like these goals of what perfect ILL would look like in your library, but you have to balance that against the reality of this is how much documentation I can do in a day. This is how many notes I can keep track of and whatnot in order to keep ILL flowing. So I appreciate the transparency surrounding this conversation. It's helpful. And yeah, Kat says smaller and high volume libraries alike. We only really note it's visible from the outside or on quick handling back and forth across the desk. Yes, this is an experience across libraries. And Wendy writes, I thought condition in the system was for damage, but learned quickly that it was actually conditional. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so if you get a request in Clover with the status of conditional, there's typically like a message, something related to the loan, whether it be, oh, we can only loan this for a couple of weeks, or I don't know, maybe if it's coming from out of state, there's a fee associated with it, and there's no free lenders, but it's going to cost $15. Do you still want it? Something like that. So if you ever have a question about a conditional request, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help clear that up. And yeah, Kat shares, conditionals are my favorite feature, but boy, are they weird and niche ILL jargon. Yeah, I completely agree. And I do think that when we're having this conversation, if you were maybe the only available lender for a book or one of just a few, and somebody requested it from you and it was in kind of rough shape, you could consider replying conditional and saying, we have a copy of this, but it's not in the best shape. I just wanted to check and make sure you still want it before we lend it out. You could use it for those types of situations as well. So yeah, conditional is a pretty cool feature in Clover. We like it a lot. Great. Well, thanks everybody for your comments on that. We're going to have great meeting notes for folks to reference after this. I think that'll be helpful. I'm going to head back over to the agenda and see what the next discussion point is. I almost passed it. So this is just up here at the bottom of the page. This was just submitted by a colleague of mine who works closely in Clover with loans for both Vermont State Library materials coming from Barre to other libraries and also out-of-state requests. Just a general reminder when you're working in Clover, just to please mark your ILLs as received and returned in Clover on the dates that the items are received and returned by your library. And I don't mean to be redundant in saying that we just have noticed a pattern of sometimes folks will mark items as received on the same day that they're returning the item. And if that happens once in a while, it's all good. We'd much prefer to have some sort of record than no record, but whenever possible, to please get into the practice of marking the item as received when you receive it, and then once you send it back in the courier or USPS, to mark it as returned. To follow up on that, when an item stays in like the shipped but not received status for a while, sometimes libraries will wonder, did the library get it? We will get questions from the out-of-state libraries wondering if the Vermont library received it, especially sometimes, as you know, books will come from all over the country. Like we'll request books from like Washington State and Oregon and Florida, that you're keeping those statuses up to date as you can is very appreciated. And if you have questions about how to do that, please reach out anytime. We have a couple of comments that came in here from Kat that I'm going to read through. She writes, accurate updating of those statuses helps with tracking lost items too, for sure. She writes, those timestamps we can pull from the system are super helpful. Yeah, when folks reach out on the listserv and there's like, this book is missing in transit, has anybody seen it? I go into Clover and I look and I see when was it shipped. I look at the courier schedule and I have a look at when does that library have their stops? When is the library expecting it having their stops? Reach out to Priority Express and go through the motions of trying to track it down. And having accurate received and returned and shipped dates in Clover goes a long way in helping to make sure that that moves along smoothly. So yeah, I appreciate your comment there, Kat. That definitely rings true. transaction. And so this is specifically referring to when you get a request from the VSS Clover account for an item that like a library in Kentucky or Missouri or somewhere out of state is requesting it. We will enter the request in Clover, and that will be channeled to a Vermont State Library. Oftentimes, those books might be loaned for a couple of months, and they'll make their way back to the library. And I think that just what I'm gathering from what I'm seeing in Clover, I think that some libraries might be checking them into their ILS. And so much time has frankly passed, to be honest, it kind of slips away to check it into Clover as well. And so when that does occur, items in OCLC WorldShare go into a status of returned complete ? And then state library staff go through manually and check the catalogs of the libraries where those materials were sent to, and we make sure that it was actually returned and checked in, and then update the statuses in OCLC. So if folks are able, when they loan something out of state, when it comes back, that would be helpful just so that we can kind of keep tabs on that. And just as sort of a quick reminder, nothing major. We have a comment here in the chat. I'm just going to check out. Tenzin writes, we're usually good at that, but recently we were short-staffed, so we've been delayed for receiving. Yeah, that's all good. I appreciate you noting that. Totally understandable. And thanks for letting me know. No worries there. Oh, before I go to the next point, I have another comment here. This one's coming from Michelle at Fletcher, a Memorial Library. She writes, this happens when ILL books do not have a bookstrap or identifier. Volunteers check them in and shelve them. Yes, and we will be having a discussion about bookstraps here, just a couple bullet points down. I think that would be helpful. And yeah, I can see how that would happen. So thank you for your comment there. All right, so next up on the agenda, this is a listserv email that was shared on October 3rd, which feels like forever ago, gosh. So this is just a reminder about courier labels, and I'm happy to re-forward the original email that I sent out on the listserv on October 3rd if anybody might have missed it. I believe I cross-posted it to ILL and courier, but if anybody missed it, just let me know. The message was about courier labels for Brandon Free, Orwell, and Salisbury. Some of the library staff had reached out to me just commenting about some delays in their deliveries and sorting of materials due to libraries using old labels. So I just wanted to share a reminder with everybody to please double check that you're using the correct courier labels when sending items to Brandon Free Public Library and or Orwell Free. Brandon has been continuing to receive items with old Salisbury labels, and we just want to make sure everything is going to the right place smoothly. So if you're shipping to one of these libraries that I mentioned, here's the flow that we would request for any ILLs that are going to Brandon or Orwell. If the ILL is going to Brandon, please use the Brandon Free Public Library label. And if it's headed to Orwell Free Library, please use the Brandon Orwell Partner Library label. All of the courier labels are posted on the courier webpage on the Department of Libraries website. I'll include a link in the meeting summary for that. But I just wanted to put a reminder here in the meeting in addition to what I mentioned on the listserv. I have a couple of questions here in the chat that I'm going to read through. Robin says, what should the correct labels say for these libraries? Oh, sure. So the labels, the correct labels were shared on the listserv, and the document that's on the Department of Libraries website has the most up-to-date labels. So when you go to the courier webpage and you open the sheet of labels for the individual libraries, they're linked from the courier schedule. You click on the library's name and that will open up the newest label document. I'm also happy to email those out, and they were also added as attachments to that listserv email. And Gail writes, could you put a date on the labels when you create them each year? That way we would have a clue that it might be an out-of-date label. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. The courier schedule document has a header and a footer with the date. So if you're going to that document and accessing the individual labels from there, there is a date that's like this document was revised on. And I do believe I have some revised dates for those documents on the Department of Libraries webpage as well. But I will work on adding it to the Microsoft Word document for the individual labels. I think that that might help clear up some of the confusion there. Oh, and Mel says that she has to head out. That's all good. Thanks for joining. I know this is running a little bit long. She says we have a box of labels. Gail follows up. I'd like the date on each label. I'll see if I can accomplish that in the Microsoft Word template that we're using for sure. Thank you. And each time labels change, I do share them out on the Courier listserv as well. So I'll continue to do that. So just keep an eye out there. And if you're here in this meeting and your library is on the Courier, but you're not on the listserv, let me know and I can help you get signed up too. So thank you for those requests and the feedback. That's helpful for me. So I have here a section of just general ILL discussion, but before we jump into there, because it is 2:20 and I want to make sure we have enough time, I wanted to, before we have that just sort of open discussion, which I think I'll save for the end, in the August 2025 meeting, there was an extended conversation about different libraries' workflows with book bans, paperwork, book straps. And so I asked if folks had samples, and it's okay if not, we can like describe what you used, samples of ILL books from your library with or without the paperwork, book straps, to share an example with the group. And just to remind folks of what we were talking about back in August was a discussion of Section 5.6 of the Vermont ILL Code and ideas about what constitutes quote unquote sufficient information, and thinking about ideas for best practices and workflows related to that in your libraries. So Section 5.6 of the ILL Code says, when filling requests, the supplying library should send sufficient information with each item to identify the request. The supplying library should also indicate the due date and any restrictions on the use of the material and any special return packaging or shipping requirements. The due date is defined as the date the material is due to be checked in at the borrowing library for return to the supplying library. The supplying library should include a return mailing label with each item. And so I can copy and paste that text into the chat, and I'll stop sharing the screen. And I was just kind of curious to hear folks' thoughts on this, if you have a book you'd like to share or anything like that. And I just copied the section there into the chat. Oh, Robin, please feel free to get us started. Thanks for raising your hand.
Oh, you're welcome. So I, happily enough, while I was in this, got my books back from Interlibrary loan. So I have an example that just came back. And I made, oh, the focus on that is terrible, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's odd. That's okay.
I think that's because I've set up that it will blur my background and it sees that as my background. And I don't know where to change that, but I made little slips, partially because I have to say it makes me nuts to print out an entire sheet of paper for every ILL. And it also makes me nuts to try to cut the little band off the edge and tape it round. I'm like, why am I doing this? So I made little sheets that say Grand Isle Free Library, Grand Isle, Vermont, and then have my email address. And then it's a line that says borrower, a line that says request number, and a line that says due date for a, see, you can show yours. And I edit, and part of why I started doing this is I received in my bin a book that was not for me or from me, and someone had done that. And I was like, that's freaking brilliant. And the only thing that one was missing was the email address. So then I had to go spelunking to find the email address of who to contact. And so that's why I added the email, you know, the contact information for my library. And it makes it super fast to check them in when libraries leave them. Some libraries don't, because then I can just pull up and type in the request number and it pops right up when I'm checking them in. It just makes my life faster. And I also write the due date in the back because we still use due date slips. So I write it in the back and I write ILL, which is super handy when I'm weeding to know where my books were getting checked out. Like, were they getting checked out at ILL, or were they getting checked out by my patrons? And then I reached out to Carolyn at one point because I had seen that thing of like set the due date for when it should be back to the library, and asked, okay, so when do I set the due date for in my catalog? And I'm now setting the due date for the day after my bin is supposed to come back, the week following their due date, if that makes sense. So I get my, if they turn it, if I have set a due date for the patron to return it to the library on a Tuesday, I get my bin on a Tuesday, I set their due date to the Wednesday, the week after. So they have 8 days after that for it to hopefully get through the system. And I
Thanks, Robin. Yeah.
You're welcome. I'm wondering if I can, I don't know how to unblur myself. So there you go.
Well, thank you for trying, and thank you for bringing an example that's helpful. And Kat shares in the comments, I love your little slips. Lincoln uses something similar and they work great. Noreen says, can you send a picture of it on here? And Kat says, can you maybe send around a template for the little slips? Yeah, if anyone here attending today's meeting has a template that their library is currently using that you'd like to share, feel free to send that out on the ILL listserv. You can email it to me and I could put it in with the meeting summary email too, as well as pictures. Maybe I can put like something together of examples for people. I know that the Vermont State Library, I believe we have small slips that my colleague Vance uses, and I can see if he has a template as well, or how he prints those out as well. Oh, Wendy, you have your hand raised. Please feel free.
With me talking so much, you would think I'd know right where the mic is.
Hey, it's all good. No worries.
Yeah, so to answer the question in the chat, we just send these little things out to the requesting libraries. And at the very, very bottom, it says this slip is for your convenience only. Feel free to discard. We've had discussions in the past about how much paperwork we were getting. And there you go. Robin got hers to work. There it is.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin.
So yeah. It was just a matter of people were complaining about how much paperwork that was getting sent that was really unnecessary. And so that's where this came up, because we agree. Too much paper. And then I also a copy of what we do. When the books come in, we will print out a book strap for our patron. That way they know what their due date is, that everything is highlighted, like this is due by this date. And it also says, you know, this item is loaned to you with the understanding it'll be handled with care. You know, same thing that I believe is on everybody's book straps. We'll just stick those on, you know, when they come in, so that we know who they're going to. We don't have to look anything up. If, you know, if somebody has sent us, has sent the book with a book strap, we'll either write the patron's name on it or we'll just stick ours over the top of it.
Thanks,
And
Wendy.
I don't have
really
a template.
appreciate that.
I'm sorry. I just made it in in a Word, and it was, yeah, it was a lot of fun trying to get it to work.
Well, thank you for your diligence in getting that to work out, and thank you for sharing your example. I think that's to me, you know, and this is open for interpretation of what's a sufficient amount of information, but that seems like not a ton of paperwork and communicating the key information, and you're giving your patron a book with the book strap too. So I think that covers bases. Yeah. Let's see, Alice, I believe you had your hand raised first. If you'd like to unmute and share.
I had to find that button too.
All good.
I just use these straps that you guys have in your system. And what makes it, let's see, where's that damn camera? There we go. It's probably backwards. But the only thing I'm interested in there is the barcode. I don't want to have to look up a bunch of stuff in Clover. I just get the request manager out and scan that barcode. It's back, check it in, good. And for me, that's the easiest part. So I'm sorry if there's too much paperwork that goes out with our books, but that's really the only thing I'm interested in having come back besides the books.
Yeah, the
And
barcodes are convenient. Yeah, thanks, Alice. Yeah, go ahead,
sometimes I
sorry.
get these little cute colorful ones from Clover. So I don't know how you get the colorful ones, but I really like those ones too.
Oh yeah, maybe there's like 2 different options when you go to print in Clover. That colorful template is fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
we
there
have a-
is,
we
but
have
it
a
also
color-
has the little barcode, which is what I'm interested in.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a color printer, so sometimes we accidentally hit or don't hit black and white, so it'll come out the color.
All right, now how do you get your hand down? There we go.
Okay, great.
Thanks for
Oh,
listening.
oh, thank you, Alice. I really appreciate your comments and thanks for sharing your examples. And seeing those 2 straps from Clover is helpful. There's a couple of comments that I'll catch up with in the chat, but I wanted to quickly read Kat's because it's super pertinent to what Alice just shared. Kat writes, the colorful one is a book strap and the non-color ones are the shipping labels. So if you're in Clover and you're going to print, this is helpful for me because I wasn't aware of this. If you're looking for that colorful one, go to print the book strap, and then if you're looking for that less colorful one that Alice had shared, that's the shipping label. I'm going to take a look at that after this meeting and educate myself a bit as well, but just wanted to share that note. I'm not sure if Kelly or Robin had your hand raised first. I'm sorry, but go ahead, Kelly. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but there are definitely noisy teenagers all around. I've always sent this with every book that I've loaned out. And it has my address as the due date, has your address. I feel like that folded up inside the book. That's kind of how I've always done things. And then I've been able to keep track of my tracking numbers. And I just put my tracking number sticker right on there on the copy that I keep. And then if something goes missing, I have the tracking number right at hand.
Thanks, Kelly. And are you printing that paper from Clover?
Yes, this is just
Okay.
it's just the shipping label. And I just
Okay.
print 2 copies of it and I put one with the book and I keep one for myself. And I always send a return shipping mailing label too.
Okay, great. All right, this is cool to see. So we've got a mix of small templates, the shipping label, the book strap from Clover, return labels. This is great. Thanks, everybody. Robin, would you like to go ahead with your question and then I'll catch up with the chat.
Yep. I just wanted to say that I actually also made a form, figuring out where the camera is, although you can't really see what it says because it's background backwards. But that's for the ones that we receive from my patrons. So that one is patron, card number, lender, request number, and due date. And it's just easier for me to do that than printing the book strap and fiddling and whatever. Although I should probably include contact information on there. But
yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah, like phone number or email or something like that. Totally. Yeah, that saves a step for sure. Yeah, thanks, Robin. And thanks for adjusting your camera so you could do the show and tell. I appreciate you troubleshooting that. The joy of Teams. Cool. Oh, thanks everybody. This has been great. I'm gonna catch up here with comments on the chat about this bookstrap conversation. Oh, thanks. Robin had commented saying that she can send her template to me. That's awesome. I can distribute that with the group, and I might be able to even find a way to get that onto the ILL website or maybe in the Google Drive folder on the ILL website so that folks have like a super easy way to download that. So I will work on that this week. Yeah, Noreen agrees and commiserates with everyone. She says, yes, too much paperwork with a smiley face. A comment coming in from Kat, she writes, for those who are using the printed book straps, the college, Middlebury, just keeps a little bin of pre-cut recycled strips that we use to attach book straps. We just make them whenever we have a bit of extra paper without confidential info and grab them from the bin as needed. Well, that's a cool trick and a great way to reuse the paper. Thanks for sharing that, Kat. And she writes, hey, whatever you can use to transfer that info, we'll take it. Yeah, totally. Whether it be the paper slip or the book band or the Clover record, we'll make it work. So I really appreciate the openness of conversation and everybody sharing their different workflows. This is helpful and helping me to learn a lot too. Karen writes, we at St. Johnsbury Athenaeum have a receipt printer for due date slips. When we print through Clover on the receipt printer, it creates a small slip with a barcode that we attach to book straps made from recycled paper. That's a cool workflow, and thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's a good trick. Thanks, Karen. Kat, barcodes are the best. Yes, cheers for barcodes. That was cool to see Alice's workflow with just scanning the barcode right into the request manager. And if folks have questions about how to do that, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help with little Clover tricks that can help your workflows. Noreen writes, I don't have a printer on my floor, so to get a book out to other libraries makes it take that much longer. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I can see how that would be a challenge and just an additional step in the process along the way. Kat writes, oh, we already covered these two comments, but just again, in Clover, there's the option of the book strap, which is the colorful printout, and then the shipping label is the other option. She shares as well that both forms work just fine. They have that phenomenal barcode and the lender and the borrowing info. And so, we can definitely continue this conversation at future meetings and think about something to add to the best practices document at the May meeting. But I'm kind of getting the sense that some of the key components are, the library name, the barcode or request number, the lender, borrowing information, library's contact information if you have the space, whether it be on a small template or on a slip. So this is like a great starting point to think about what sufficient information means for a Vermont interlibrary loan like landscape. Tons and shares, we do the same at our library. Kat writes, contact info is always welcome. Save hauling things up in the system. Yes. Karen shares, if we receive a book without a book strap, where do we go in Clover to find one? That's a great question. I think I'm going to have to double check on that and I'll follow up in the meeting summary. If anyone happens to know offhand and would like to unmute or follow up in the chat, that's just not a workflow that I'm often in. Oh, Robin, you have your hand raised, please. Or did you just raise your hand or maybe it's been raised? I'm sorry.
I never put it down, but it's actually fine because I was going to raise it and say this.
Thank you.
If you go staff dashboard and then under ILL admin is print book straps.
Okay, awesome.
And then once you click on it, I've discovered, some of you may not care about having a sheet of paper for everyone, but if you select, you can search by request number or scroll down. If you select 2 at the same time, 2 will fit on the same sheet. So when I was printing book straps, I was trying to do 2 at the same time. So.
Gotcha. Thanks, Robin. I really appreciate you chiming in and helping with that. Thank you. And Kat chimed in the chat. Yeah, she shares ILL admin and then in the print book straps area. Alice shares, I've been adding the USPS tracking number to the request when shipping. That is, I think, super helpful if you have the time, especially if you are able to just scan the USPS number in or something quickly, including the USPS number in a lender's note when you're shipping it out or in a borrower's note when you're return shipping can be very helpful, especially if a library might be wondering where the book is. There's just a copy of they can copy and paste the tracking number into the USPS website, and that can help save a communication step between the two libraries. So thanks for sharing that, Alice. And Kat follows up on where to find the book straps or ILL admin, and then the section print shipping labels. And she adds, just be sure to toggle what's showing to include as many statuses as possible. That's a great tip. Thank you, Kat. We have some hands raised. Michelle? Michelle, I see that you've unmuted, but I'm not able to hear you. I'm not sure if other folks can. No? Okay. No worries, Michelle. Yeah, we'll give you a second to feel free, if you're able to get your audio sorted. We'd love to hear your question or you can enter in the chat. No worries at all. Well, thank you everybody for like your comments and the discussion surrounding that topic. I think that was really helpful. I'm going to compile notes about everything we've talked about today, but especially this discussion point so that we can consider at the next meeting and preparing for the potential updates to the best practices document in May, what we might like to consider adding with regards to sufficient information and paperwork for ILLs or slips or whatever we'd like to call it. Less paperwork, maybe. I'm going to bop back over to the agenda just to kind of go over, we have about 20 minutes available left with the remaining meeting time and just see how we'd like to use that. So I'm going to bop over to the agenda just to kind of share what I have here. So what I had skipped over because I wanted to make sure that we had enough time, and that was a great discussion about paperwork, book straps, was just a general ILL discussion, successes, challenges to share, anything that's been coming up, interesting, quirky requests, what's working well, any tips. And I had some questions here, but I think I might save this question for the next meeting because I think it might be a bit of a longer discussion. But if there's any other questions that folks had and also ideas about future roundtables, Karen, I thought was like a great guest speaker today. She had reached out to me saying that she was curious if she could join the meeting and share a little bit of information about Able Library and shipping those types of materials. I hope that you found the information that she shared to be helpful, informative. I know that I did. If you have any ideas that come up either now or after the meeting, feel free to email me or bring them up about guest speakers, training topics, vendor demos that you'd like to see. I might be able to reach out to like the team at Autographics and see if somebody from their team would be able to come in and speak with us, something like that. And what areas of ILL would you like to explore more deeply in these upcoming roundtables? What would you like to see? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and just open up for general discussion and questions. Oh, Kelly, I see that your hand is raised. Was that raised from before? Did you just raise it? I'm sorry. No? Okay, no worries. Thank you. We have a comment here in the chat from Noreen, speaker using VT Kit Club. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. I'll make a note of that. And if anyone else has anything that they'd like to chime in and share, whether it be other things to talk about or discussion topics for a future roundtable, now is a great time for that. Oh, Michelle from Fletcher Memorial shares, we keep an ongoing form and a 3-ring binder where we keep the request info numbers, borrowing library, etc. This list is updated when books come back. And she adds, we send with book straps, but they come back without them. That's a great system for tracking the materials on your at your circ desk. And yeah, sending the book straps, but they come back without them. My understanding is that they should be coming back with them based on our conversations. Yes, Wendy's nodding her head. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I think that reminding folks via the best practices and in upcoming meetings and just with your library workflows to keep the paperwork with the book when it goes back to the library. Yeah, Wendy shares patrons love to break the rules. That's fair. I mean, we're libraries, you have to be bad somewhere, I guess. And Kat shares, we also send with book straps. I can always tell when the courier is unloading because we have tons of books without their book straps. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that context. And Meg has a hand raised. Please feel free to chime in, Meg.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of second what Noreen had put in there as a future discussion topic. With like reserving kits in general, because I think I know there was like a lot of confusion when Kit Keeper kind of shuttered, and then the move to the Kit Club over on LibCal, and I know people have been. I put some questions out on the listserv about this, so I know people have all sorts of different reasons for either deciding to continue with that specific one or move to a different one. But I think where like, and I've worked a little bit with Susanna at Fletcher Free, who's done a lot of work on this with the Kit Club one in particular. But I think now just seeing how people are kind of keeping their kits in all different places, and then I know the state has a bunch of kits, I just think it would be great because I'm assuming those of us that do ILL also would be the kit point people, just making sure like what all the different options are to make sure that whoever has kits are actually going out and being used by people, but also that people are looking in the right places. Yeah, I just think there's a lot of different stuff.
I really appreciate you bringing up this question. I think that's a great one. And I will look into this and put something together for the next roundtable, which I believe is coming up in February. To be completely honest, I have some questions about this myself because there are so many different places it seems that kits are being offered, whether it be the kits in LibCal, the discussion sets that are in Clover, listed in libraries, catalogs, KitKeeper, and there's also the discussion set spreadsheet that's on the Department of Library's website that I came across and had shared to the listserv that I think has been around for a while as like a collaborative document amongst libraries, but maybe is a little out of date. So I really appreciate you bringing this up, and I will try to put together some sort of like informational, if you're looking for this is where to go, and these are the options that I can share with everybody and then summarize into the meeting notes. So thanks a bunch for bringing that up because it's something that I would like to learn more about too. Oh, Wendy, please feel free.
I'm finding that the schools are not paying much attention to the ILLs. I have a homeschooling family, and a lot of the books I'm not finding in the regular libraries, and they'll be in school libraries, but they just keep getting skipped over because they're not paying attention to them unless, of course, they need us.
I appreciate you mentioning that. I will check and see. You know, my understanding is that my predecessor would reach out on the VSLA listserv at the end of the year, encouraging libraries to mark their will not supply dates or like their vacation dates for the holidays. And I'm just kind of thinking a lot. I'm wondering if maybe there's something at play there where libraries are receiving requests and maybe they're not knowing. So I'll speak with my colleagues about some sort of like maybe communication that I could put forth perhaps to the VSLA listserv or like an informational message to those school libraries. I appreciate you bringing that up because I understand and empathize with how much time that adds to getting the book to your library when it's sitting in that pending queue until it times out to expired. That could be days. So thanks for bringing that up, Wendy, and I apologize for the struggle that you're coming across there because that's I can see how that'd be frustrating. Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Wendy. A question from Robin.
I'm just wondering what our responsibility is when we ship a book like in the mail, particularly out of state. I had one where I shipped it out of state. They were like, we didn't get it, and it turned out they had received it and they'd accidentally sent it back and wanted me to send it back out to them again. And I'm just wondering, like, is that a legitimate request? Or, you know, it was very odd.
That's the first time. That is odd. That's the first time that I've come across something like that. I'd be curious to hear if other libraries have encountered that, but my immediate thought would be perhaps, and if I'm way off base here, tell me, but maybe requesting an invoice for that second shipping fee. I'm not sure if that would be completely out of line, but if that was...
I'll tell you what I did, because it's like, and you were, I don't think, you know, neither one of us understood when we first received, you know, you got an email from them that said we didn't get this or whatever. And I looked into it and saw that it had been received and told them. And then 3 days later, it came back and they had sent it back to me. And I did a really childish thing and I checked it in and marked it as lost so they couldn't find it on in my library again right away. Cause I was like, no, I've tried this once. And it was signed for in your library. I'm sorry.
That's totally fair. Yeah, I respect that decision. Yeah, and that works best for your workflow. Yeah.
Right. I was like, yep, did this once, not doing it again. You're bad.
Yeah, a one and done transaction. I think that's totally fair. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that as going back to your question about like what the responsibility is, I'm not sure what the Vermont ILL code states regarding books going out of state. I could speak more to the loans happening within the state of Vermont and the expectations. I'll check into the ALA ILL code and I'll follow up on this either in the meeting summary or at a future meeting to see what the responsibilities are. My thought just offhand would be that it would be coming from the borrowing library out of state in that situation that you described would hold the responsibility, but I'll look into that further and confirm with the group because I just want to make sure I'm providing the most accurate information that I can about that. So thank you, Robin. I've got some comments here in the chat that I'm going to catch up with. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I think I'll be able to cover the comments here. Gail writes, oh, we got a weird request today. The title was Galaxies, Galaxies by Gail Gibbons, which we don't own. But the call number was J Fiction Tarshish. Forgive my potential mispronunciation there. We have the I Survived books, but I couldn't tell what they wanted. I think all libraries are denying the request. I'll take a look in Clover and have a peek. I wonder if maybe it's like a blank request where the information could have been misentered or something, but I'll take a look at that after the meeting and I'll follow up with you over email or add a comment on the request and channel it appropriately. But I appreciate you bringing that up. That does sound kind of bizarre just from reading through your comment. So I'm happy to help with troubleshooting that. And thanks for bringing it up here. Tenzin asks, is it called LibCal for the Kit Club? We can use a LibCal discussion. Yeah, I think LibCal would be a great future topic for this meeting. And not to spoil any surprises, but the Department of Libraries is planning an informational LibCal comprehensive webinar. I believe that's going to be scheduled for early New Year. I think we're aiming for January or February. So I think that the next roundtable will be falling after that presentation. So I'll make sure that the LibCal webinar information is shared via the ILL listserv so that everybody here has a chance to join that if they want. And I'll also summarize content from that presentation and would be happy to answer any questions about LibCal at the February meeting. That's a great discussion point. Thank you for bringing that up. I just made a note of that as well. And Wendy adds, we highlight the part that says, please do not remove, they still ignore, but not as much. Yeah, highlighter, you know, definitely ways you can call your attention to those instructions is helpful. Yeah, thank you for your comment. We try. Yeah. And oh, from McClure, she writes, Gail, we got the same request. Yeah, that's interesting. And Cat shares, I wonder if it was a glitched record in Clover. Mail bounce backs are the worst. Yeah, it could be something like that, something went amiss. I'll be curious to check this request out. This is like, the suspense is building after this meeting. I'll check it out and see what's going on. Tenzin shares, just so you know that our library, and this is Fletcher Free, not South Burlington, like I said earlier, has construction and it's affecting the youth area. We apologize if it's taking a while to send it out. Thanks, Tenzin. Totally understandable how construction can impact like the turnaround times. Thanks for your transparency, and for anybody here in the meeting who's requesting materials from that library, just something to keep in mind for now. And Kat writes, sometimes our things bounce in the mail, so they never arrive at the borrower. But if they arrive and get shoved back, that's a whole different beast. Yeah, for sure. Ugh. Mail. And Robin writes, it showed that they received it and signed for it in the USPS record. And Kat shares, you know, that's frustrating as heck. I'm sorry. Yeah, definitely. That's a tricky situation for sure. Well, we have a little bit of time left if anyone else has any other discussion topics, interesting requests, successes, challenges that they'd like to share, questions for me, for anybody here in the group, future topics. I'm all ears. So I'm happy to stay on for a bit longer. If folks have anything else they'd like to add, unmuting yourselves or in the chat, please feel free. But it looks like I have caught up with the chat, so I will, oh, here's a comment. This is great. Alice writes, I'm always interested to hear how people process their outgoing requests. And yeah, if anyone has additional information they'd like to share about that, that's great. You know, it's interesting for me to hear about all these different workflows as well. And Robin writes, I would love to know steps of suspending lending for a week. Oh, sure. I'm happy to follow up with you for more specific instructions with that, but in summary, from the staff dashboard, if you go into the participant record, you can enter your library's holiday dates, and there's a format for how you enter them. And we also have a tutorial video that I'd be happy to share with you that's on the department's YouTube page. But you can set your holiday dates in the participant record. And the key thing is, if you make any changes to the participant record, you want to make sure you go to the upper corner and hit submit, because I have made the mistake of thinking that I have set holiday dates and then I didn't, and then we got requests anyway. So lesson learned. So I'll be happy to send you the link and the information for that. I'm just gonna jot a quick note for myself, just in case the transcripts doesn't get it. Kat says, a heads up that you may see no renewals allowed on some newer fiction that goes out from Middlebury College. It's a decision made from on high, and I'm fighting it, but not having great luck. Thank you for your transparency and for sharing that information about the new policy. You know, I understand that with some of those things, when the decision is being made from up here, there's only so much that you can do, of course, but I appreciate your efforts to advocate for, you know, open lending of those materials as much as possible within the policy parameters of your organization. Thank you. Yeah, and Alice follows up and says, oh, interested in hearing about how people process their outgoing requests when they're not on the courier since we can't join. Yeah, so if there's any libraries here who primarily process their materials and they're shipping them through USPS or another like shipping vendor outside of the Priority Express courier, please feel free to like share those workflows either here in the remaining time or over the listserv, or you could reach out to Alice directly as well. Yeah, thanks so much for all of your comments. This was a really great discussion today. And so with it's 2:55, so I'll start to wrap up, but if other comments come up, I'll happily share those as well. But I just wanted to thank everybody so much for taking the time out of the meeting today. We've never used almost the full 2 hours before. So this is like really great. I'm happy that we had such a fruitful discussion and so much to talk about. I will be working on the meeting notes. With this being a bit of a longer meeting, my goal is to have the meeting notes up on the department's website along with the recording and sharing all of that out onto the listserv by end of day Friday. So do keep an eye out for that. However, if there's something that came up in the meeting today that you'd like information about in the meantime or something time sensitive, feel free to send me an email and I'll respond to you as soon as I can with the information, because I know sometimes you'll hear something and you're inspired and you want to learn more. So I totally get that. That's all good. In the agenda that I shared with the announcement for this roundtable on the listserv, there are links to the upcoming roundtables that are scheduled for the remainder. Well, this is the last one for 2025, so the 2026 roundtables are all scheduled. And then the information for those is available on the Interlibrary Loan Roundtable webpage on the website, which I'll send a link out to in the meeting notes so that you all have that and can find out when the next meeting is. But just in case you're interested, it is on February 10th, 2026, 10 a.m. on Teams. So I've been doing, picking up with my predecessor, the quarterly schedule of Tuesdays and switching between morning and afternoon. So I'm hoping that's working well for folks, but if you have other ideas about meeting times or how you'd like these meetings to be scheduled and whatnot, please feel free to send me an email. You know, I'm pretty new to this, so I'm all ears to any ideas that folks have. So yeah, that's my little spiel. I so appreciate seeing everybody, and thank you for taking, you know, like 2 hours out of your day to come together and talk about interlibrary loan. I really appreciate everybody's contributions to the conversation and everybody's dedication to resource sharing here. Like, it warms my librarian heart. So thanks everybody, and thanks for your comments in the chat. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if you have questions, you know where to find me. I hope everybody has a great holiday season and a happy new year ahead. Thanks everybody, and take care. Bye.